Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast. We've had first contact, sure. But what about second contact? That's what we're talking about today as we go over my favorite Star Trek, I think, or second in the top three. Star Trek Lower Decks. Can't wait to discuss this. It wrapped up the day that we're going live, the day that we recorded. Series finale just aired, and I can't wait to talk about it. Since we are live, we're doing this as like a partial what's new, partial single issue thing. And since we're doing that, if you are live, feel free to shout out where you're coming from, and we'll announce it here in a little bit. Do want to introduce who we are first. I am one of the co-hosts, Joshua Noel, here with someone who would never be found in the lower decks. Someone who is always on the bridge, the one and only Captain Christian Ashley. How is it going?
Well, earlier today, I got promoted to either first officer or lieutenant commander, so I'm going to take that.
Well, now you're captain. You just keep going up. Can't wait till you're admiral.
Check out our newest episode on what we would be if we were on the Enterprise or we were in Starfleet.
God, it was such a good episode.
Those guys did a really great job.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, we do want to do a shout out to one of our supporters. Remember, you can support the show on Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcasts. And Daniel Sigmund did that, so he gets a shout out. And if you would also like a shout out, $3 or less, you can be like Daniel and be cool like him. If you're on a laptop, make sure you go to Good Pods or to Podchaser to rate and review us. That helps algorithms, search engines like Google think that we're important so other people find the show. But if you're on your phone, you can use an Apple Podcast or Spotify, comment, rate and review on those apps, and that'll help their search engines prioritize our show. It's all about tricking those algorithms. Help us trick them. Be deceitful. That's what your favorite Christians tell you to do. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into lightning round. I'm going to start by saying one thing that we're not going to mention. We're not going to mention Star Trek Skeleton Crew, but we might talk about other lightning round things.
Star Trek?
Star Wars, whatever it is. The thing that's called Skeleton Crew, we're not talking about it. I have somehow I've managed to avoid spoilers to the extent that I don't even know what the show is about. So I'm going to wait till like mid-January when it's almost over and then watch the whole thing. Literally the only thing I know, I've unfortunately overheard people compare it to the Goonies. And I know that there's a character that kind of looks like an elephant.
You don't like the Goonies?
Oh, I've never seen the Goonies. I only think it's unfortunate because I don't want any information. I want to totally have no information other than the name going into this.
You are so weird.
I've never gotten to just experience something fresh, so I'm excited about it. One thing I am not doing that for, though, is the new Superman movie. So since we're in lightning round, part of why I was like 5 minutes late, I had to watch that trailer. It wouldn't load on my phone earlier, so I had to watch it on my TV, which I'm glad I did. It was fantastic. I'm pretty excited to see Crypto the Superdog. Literally, my only problem is that dude doesn't at all look like someone from Kansas. Like that one clip where he's like on the farm, like this guy does not belong on a farm. He just doesn't look like he's ever been there. But other than that, it was perfect.
Okay. Yeah, it was a really great trailer. I'm excited to see where they go.
Yeah, good stuff. What else do you want to shout out in the lightning round? I got a few things, but
yeah, Creature Commandos.
I was also going to mention
released earlier today. I really love what Gunn is doing with this series. I have never once cared about any of these characters before now. I care about all of them now. He just does such an amazing job with people that you wouldn't care about, and just saying, no, there's depth here. I just needed a better writer for him.
I've always loved Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein. I had never had any idea that was part of DC. So I was like, this is kind of cool.
Not one of their popular things. I knew they existed in the DC universe. I didn't know anything about how.
I'm even okay. What's his name? Weasel. I actually like him being involved, even though I thought he was gone for. So that's fine. It's cool.
Well, if you haven't seen the most recent episode, that was his episode.
Well, I've not, but I'm catching up. Let's see other things. Comic books. Lilo and Stitch has had a pretty decent comic book run going on. I haven't loved the Absolute Superman, Absolute Batman stuff that everybody's really hype on so far. I've read like one of each, and I was like, yeah, I don't care. But the new Justice League comic that came out, I really loved. And the next one drops Christmas Day, I think, or the day after Christmas, because everything's closed Unlimited. Christmas Day. Is it Justice League Unlimited? Yeah. I really enjoyed it. The first one, the characterization, the colors, the art, everything was really cool, beautiful. The only thing really was the story was definitely predictable. Like the twist at the end, I was like, yeah, we all knew that was going to happen. But it was still cool. It was still fun. Anything else for you? Okay. Lightning round?
Yeah, I will not mention the other thing. I'll just also say Not So Many Books of Friends is in its 7th season right now. And if you want something that's very chill, there are low stakes, but then when the stakes are big, they also matter. It's a really fun, just chill series of him trying to learn about his grandmother and also interacting with the yokai in his life, as he's like one of the only people who can see him. It's really fun. And that's all I have, since I can't mention the other thing.
Okay, so my other lightning round stuff then, Indiana Jones new game turns out it's really good. I haven't played it yet. I've watched some gameplay and some videos, read some reviews, and I think I am going to be getting it. It looks awesome, which I did not have high hopes. Usually stuff that's based on other things like that in video game world turns bad. That was not the case apparently, so I'm really happy. You got some pretty high reviews. The Gaming Awards just happened, so PlayStation beat out Nintendo, so that was cool for family friendly game of the year. And also, pretty sure Fable's going to be getting more announcements soon. I need more Fable in my life, so that's important. But
okay,
I think that might be it. There's another show or something I'm watching, but I don't remember what it is. So let's jump into Star Trek.
Let's do it.
All right, so getting into Star Trek Lower Decks. First thing first, what is your history of Star Trek, and then specifically what's your history with Lower Decks, Christian?
Yeah, Star Trek has been a part of my life pretty much, since I've been born. My dad has always been a huge Trekkie, and he introduced me to the original series. Then while I was still young, Next Generation was wrapping up, and I would watch a little bit of that with him, never remembering anything. That and DS9, and then I got into Voyager, then Enterprise, and of course watching all the movies. Star Trek has just always kind of been there in my life, and it's a series that is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the Star Trek episode, the What If We Were Members of Star Trek, and I just got to say that Herbie is so correct. Enterprise is way underrated. It's so good.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of my favorite characters come from Enterprise.
It deserved to finish its story.
Yeah, it's sad, but
yeah,
I not very much the same. I think the first time I really saw any Star Trek was like middle school or something. I was in Kentucky for part of the summer, and my aunt's a big Trekkie, Annette, one of our patrons, and she actually had me watch some of the movies. I was like, these are awesome. I tried to watch the show back home a few times, but I think I just thought all Star Trek was the same thing. So I watched Next Gen, and I was really bored, and I was like, well, I don't like the show. The movies are fine, though. And I just went on about my life that way until really a few years ago. Lower Decks is actually, I watched it, and I was like, wait a minute. Who are these characters? They mentioned something. And then I watched Deep Space Nine because some characters were in Lower Decks. I was like, this is awesome. And then I just went and watched all the rest, and still have not finished Next Gen. But I watched all the rest of Star Trek, all the other series. I just cannot make it through Next Gen for some reason. It's not because it's bad. I enjoy what I've seen. For some reason, it doesn't grasp my attention the same way. I'm like, I literally just forget that I'm watching it when I do. And then by the time I remember, it's like, well, I'm not going to start over. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, Next Gen is not my least favorite Star Trek because Discovery exists. But if that didn't exist, it would be at the bottom of the barrel. Not because
that's
it's
true.
bad,
I never finished
but because,
Discovery.
not because I think Next Gen is bad. It just also doesn't grab my attention as well as the series do.
Yeah, I forgot I didn't finish Discovery. I have finished Picard though. Somehow Picard. Yeah, this is interesting.
Picard,
Next Gen.
Picard would be at the bottom.
What?
Outside of Discovery.
Crazy.
Outside of season 3 of Picard.
Oh, yeah. I think I just have a short enough attention span that the newer seasons are the only ones I remember sometimes. But okay, Christian, we're talking about Star Trek Lower Decks today. How would you describe the premise of this series? Like what? Like someone's like Lower Decks. What's that?
So Lower Decks is based actually off of a Next Generation episode where Picard is actually meeting with some of the Lower Decks crew, and you're seeing how their lives interact while the bridge crew is doing all the really cool, amazing stuff, finding new aliens and then fighting them and blowing things up, but also like dealing with political intrigue, and like the Lower Decks doesn't really understand what's happening because no one's communicating with them that much. So we have our crew here of our really insubordinate Mariner, joined by Boimler, who's the guy who's just wanting to advance.
These are not the same Lower Deck people from the Next Gen episode.
Oh, no. Yeah,
just to clarify.
Separate series. Then we've got Rutherford, who's our geeky little engineer, and Tindy, our geeky little science officer, medical officer, as they're all like navigating the fact that they're at the bottom barrel of the chain, and how do they rise in the ranks? Like, do they want to? And we have Mariner is our main focus character for the most part, and she has transferred for multiple ships, and now we find is actually under the command of her mother, who is the captain of the Cerritos, who's kind of like the Lower Decks are to the main bridge crew. They are to the rest of Starfleet. They're just like nobodies, comparatively speaking. So they get the Enterprise gets the big jobs. They get the lower end jobs. And so it's them like doing the things that other people aren't willing to do because Starfleet is ordering them to do it. And them trying to find a way to actually gain respect for what they've done.
Yeah. And then also, I think one of the more interesting parts too is it's mentioned in the first series that their second contact is what they do. So, you have the Enterprise who goes out.
I was going to get to.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were done.
Is that one of the things that Captain Freeman wants to do is something that Starfleet should have done years and years ago, is build up on the idea of, well, you've established contact with these people. What about after that? Who's coming in to make sure that, everyone's off the drugs that Picard solved one time? Who's there to make sure that Landru doesn't come back and make everyone worship him again as the super awesome computer god? Well, if you don't check up on these people, well, they might not change. You solved it for the episode, but did you solve it for the civilization? And that's one thing she has is the second contact program that they kind of pull through. And I really like that idea.
Yeah. Second contact is just such a funny concept. Also, this is the point where we use this as a bait and switch, and now we proceed to tell all churches, well, you can't just have a greet and welcome the first members, but you have to develop a discipleship program. Christian's now going to give you a taste of his 12-step discipleship program, but if you want the full thing, you have to buy it at christianashley.com. Go ahead.
No, that is not happening.
Yeah, but it could. And I mean, it's also a good point, as cheesy and annoying as it is when people do that. We're not going to bait and switch you, but it is a good point that a lot of times the church cares about getting people in the door and doesn't follow up with their lives afterwards. But isn't it? It's a thing. We're not going to turn this into that episode, though. Instead, we're going to move on, talk a little bit more. Some of the different roles in the ship, some of the different characters. We want to talk about, what do they do? What do the people in the Lower Decks actually do? So you have the same kind of classifications, it seems like. You still have like the engineer, the science officer, but they're just like the Lower Deck version, right?
So we have like Boimler and Mariner are typically people you would see trying to advance in leadership in Starfleet, doing your more menial tasks. Got to start from the bottom and get to the top. That includes like cataloging things and cleaning up after other people and making sure the smaller systems of the ship run. And you have people like Rutherford who just enjoy the job. The fact that they get to work on a starship, he gets all geeky about his love for the Cerritos and the California class ships. And we've got Tindy, who is like the chipper kind of person you want to have around you at times because they just make you feel better, who is like just trying to figure out how to navigate, starting off as a medical officer, fresh onto the crew under Ta'ana's management, which is always very funny. Until eventually she starts leaning more towards a science kind of background and doing that kind of task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting. Some of it is like they're training to one day be like bridge crew, and then for Mariner, who I think I would call her the main character, but like really, it's like there's like 4 main characters, like 4.5.
Like, it's ensemble.
Yeah. Mariner though, she gets a bulk of my attention, and what's interesting about her is like, she actually has been part of the big ships before. She's been part of these other crews. She's actually skilled enough to do other things. She just rebels too much. She keeps getting thrown in the bridge. So this is like her last chance kind of deal, like a shape up or you're done for.
As opposed to a character like Michael Burnham, she's actually good at rebelling and good at actually being a good character.
Yeah. I did enjoy her character a lot, and the fact that what's interesting is like when you go through, I think it's okay to do this. So when you go through the 4, you see Rutherford kind of learning more the love of technology without needing a crutch kind of thing. I feel like he has probably some of the least character development. Tindy kind of gets where she's mostly, her arc I feel like is more actually learning. She wants to be a science officer. She came from a civilization where she was told she was a warrior. She's like, actually, I just kind of like science, dude. And her arc is more learning. Boimler, he just needs the confidence. He has the knowledge. He has all this stuff. So throughout this thing, you're watching this guy with no confidence, who's the lower deck on the most insignificant of all the ships, gain the confidence to be someone that you're like, oh, this guy could be a captain one day. Like I do believe in him. And then Mariner go from this rebellious, I don't want to do anything, I don't even know if I want to be part of Starfleet, screw everybody, screw this, whatever, to come to the end. It's like she has a monologue on this last episode today that I was like, she gets the point of Star Trek, where you're like, this is actually one of the more beautifully laid out visions of what the Cerritos could be. And I'm like, oh, that's the same person who immediately got thrown in the bridge of the first episode for for shenanigans. You're like, this is the same person. And yeah, actually, when you follow the 5 seasons, like the character arc, it totally makes sense. I see her becoming the person she is, and it's believable.
Oh yes, they do a great job with starting off. It's always good to have a character who's not there yet at the very beginning of whatever you're doing, and she is most definitely not there. She's in fact in the last possible place she can be before she's never going to be in her job again, and she could get kicked out. So then learning how to actually respect the people above you, while at the same time you can have a maverick streak inside of you, like, is a huge part of her character. Is like, okay, there are reasons these regulations exist, but also sometimes you're rewarded for being a little shrewd about things and going off the books and doing things another way. So both have their place in a command structure like this.
Yeah. It's kind of like Captain Kirk without all the privilege that he had. Like if he actually had repercussions for his actions, that's a whole nother thing. But I don't know. What was the station she ended up getting stuck on? That was like Garbage Land, the one episode.
Starbase 80.
Starbase 80. And that's, we'll get to that in a minute. Starbase 80 is going to come up a lot, but yeah, such a good series. I wanted to ask you though, because you've been in Star Trek a little bit longer than I have. One of the things that's interesting is this show is animated and it's a comedy. That's the great thing about being Second Contact, is the First Contact can do all the serious stuff, and then you come back and you're like, what? They left us what? What do you mean we got to do, like silly whatever garbage kind of stuff, instead of having to be the serious stuff that the first one does, even though they're not as serious. Oh, sorry, that's the finale again. But the thing of the comedy though is I feel like it reveals stuff that you can't see otherwise. Like sometimes if you don't poke fun at something, you don't quite see it for what it is. I was curious from your perspective, is there anything that they're able to use animation and comedy for that you don't think other Star Trek series could probably cover as well?
Well, one thing we get here is that obviously with animation, it's a lot easier to get away with different species designs because if you do it in real life, you got to hire prosthetics work, makeup artists, hire someone to design the alien species. And it's just easier in an animated series to get away with having Kazenti show up or Cation show up or what have you. And or Zenti, I think is actually what it is. And just have them be on screen and go, oh my gosh, that's calling back to this versus filming it for live action. Someone's got to be in the makeup booth and the costume booth or whatever for however many hours a day. There are rates for everything there. It's just simpler to do things this way. But as far as like making fun of itself, Star Trek has always made fun of itself. Like every series at some point has like a little lampshade hanging moment where they're like, okay, we're going to recognize that this doesn't actually work. But since we're in Star Trek right now, actually it does work. And that's fine. But like what this does is it takes moments like those and then it builds up upon them. It brings up things that got forgotten, like the idea of warp drive was destabilizing the entire universe essentially. That was brought up in a Next Generation episode and then never brought up again, as far as I can remember. And all these other like cetacean ops are brought up as well. Like, could you imagine having to hire, a dolphin or a whale or what have you, and have that a specific set just for them in a show? You can't do that as much in real life outside of an entire, budgeted movie like we covered not too long ago. But it gets away with stuff like that because you can show more zanier stuff. You can get things where you don't have to, worry about having to pay actors for certain things, and that, significantly reduces budget on certain stuff. But it also, at its heart, is something that cares about Star Trek itself, because this series does not exist without everything that came before. And their job is to call back to everything that came before. Not in a, hey guys, you remember this? Wasn't that cool? But in just cutting references to things. Like there's a giant Spock skeleton at one point in time, if I remember correctly, that comes from the animated series. You know how many people watch the animated series? Not too many. But it's like you can tell this is made by fans, for fans, that actually respects the source material, but also makes the hell out of the fun of it because they know we're talking about goofy things that that they make no sense in our world right now, but it's still fun to make fun of it and also fun to cheer when things go well.
Hello, friends. If you enjoy Systematic Ecology, a great way to support us and to keep us moving forward into the future is to be a patron on our Patreon network. If you're a Patreon, then you get live access to our YouTube exclusives like Comic Book Ketchup and Manga Mustard, Drinks with Tejas, and also some extra content there with our companion series to go along with our annual theme. If you're a patron, you get exclusive merch like t-shirts and handbags and mugs. There's also a bonus extra question that has extra content. In each episode, we go deeper into our faith and the questions that we're wrestling with, but we also do this extra question to jump in and share about, and patrons get to hear how we answer that question. There's discounts on our store. You get access to any future online D&D campaigns. You can easily access all of our Patreon content through our Spotify page where it says exclusive content for subscribers. That could be you folks. And all that being said, you get the satisfaction that you help us keep the lights on and keep us moving forward with our software, our marketing, our equipment, staying current in the podcast game. We love Systematic Ecology. We hope you do too. Support us moving forward. Thank you for all that you are. We know there's a lot of great choices and content out there, and you choose to listen to Systematic Ecology. Thanks, folks. We love you. Peace.
Yeah. What is it? They decided on one episode, whenever they have arguments, that they're going to use the holodeck and pretend to be who was it? The writers on the train.
Oh,
I can't remember who the character was, but they start using these terrible old Southern American accents. And wow, good chap, but proper Southern gentlemen, and you're like, this is hilarious. And then a serious argument takes place later in the episode, and we know how to handle this. Come on, guys. And they make these other serious characters have to enact this, but it works. And I think that's the genius of comedy is it takes things that maybe you're taking a little too serious and allows you to turn down the dial a little bit to see it for what it is, because sometimes you get just so serious about things. It's hard to do that. Another one for me, whenever they travel to the world of they're not called quarks.
Ferengi.
Yeah, the Ferengi. Sort of the world of Ferengi. And they have like a big memorial set up, right? And like, I feel like this would have been harder to do without it being animation. Like they still could have done it. But the memorial isn't like lives lost. It's literally profits lost. They have a giant but it looks like, like a serious sombering thing. But like, because it's an animation, you're easier to go, okay, this is a joke,
Yes.
But at the same time, that joke really sheds a light on how ridiculous it is to put profits at such a high place in your value system.
Mm-hmm. No, they do a remarkable job at all of this. Once again, it's just clear that they're fans writing not only for themselves, but also for fans who just want to hear these callbacks to things and then poke fun at things. And like, if the Ferengi ultra-capitalist system doesn't make too much sense in a world where what makes less sense is the Federation not having any money at all. So they make fun of stuff like that because like this utopia that exists only in Roddenberry's mind is not something we're ever going to be able to achieve in this world. And yet, like it because it's part of the canon, they have to make fun of it. Like DS9 did the same thing a couple of times. Mm-hmm. But like showing the two different things there that you can do in a way in animation, that's a lot more difficult in live action because once again you have to worry about actors, you have to worry about caterers and everything like that. Like, not to say that animators don't deserve to be paid and kept care of, but it's going to be a cheaper budget, option in that way. Yeah, lower budget to get things done in a 30 minutes or less kind of way, where you have to focus on these things. There's not a lot of time for filler that would pad out like your runtime on a major network or something like that. Just like get to meat and potatoes. That's what we care about, and you can do that more in animation.
That's another joke that it reminded me of. But no, the the other thing with it, like you mentioned with animation, that's really fun is like it speeds up the pace of everything. For ADHD folk, that's great. But there is one scene that they let linger. And this was also one of my favorite jokes when they pulled up to the Deep Space Nine ship and they're like, oh, we got to circle it a few times real slowly. I was like, that is phenomenal. Oh, man.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Like it's one of those, like I had to rewatch a lot of the show because I watched it before seeing some old Star Trek. And then I'm like, I can tell this is a joke about something and I need to understand the joke. So then I watched those old shows for the first time and then come back and rewatch it. And I'm like, it's even funnier the second time. It's great. Yes.
But that's the good thing about it is that you're not going to get every single joke that comes out, even if you've seen everything, that's in Star Trek, because you're going to miss animated series references or comics references or obscure merchandising references. But you can just watch it and you'll be okay. Like, yeah, I'll miss a joke or two, but like it's still funny on its own. But it is enhanced immensely by knowing what they're calling back to.
Yeah. All right. So if we had to rate this 0 to 10, Christian, where are you putting this?
For me, this is a 9.5 out of 10. I really love this show. Like I said before, it's Star Trek fans writing it for Star Trek fans. And if there's anything in a series that has gone on as long as this, if you want to appreciate it, show love to it. Show that you respect the source material in a way that a certain other sequel trilogy failed to do it completely and utterly. Like this shows respect for its source material, shows respect for the characters while still making fun of them. It does an excellent job at that. My biggest gripe against is I cannot stand some of the raunchier humor and disgusting scenes that are thrown in every now and then. They kind of really just
they're still me. Funny.
But at the end of the day, I have a solid group of characters that I really care about, that I want to see succeed, that I want to see go through these goofy shenanigans that make some obscure joke about, I don't know, the 57th episode of Deep Space Nine or TNG or whatever. And then they go, oh, it's literally like the Leo pointing meme. It's like, I recognize that reference. It's a lot of fun. This is such a well-done series that I have minor gripes with that bring down quality sometimes, but at the end of the day, like I'm standing by this series.
Well, I've given 10s on the show before. And for context, everyone, I invite Christian on another podcast of mine called Whole Church, and he cheats every single God moment. Every time. He's asked to give a God moment and gives us 5. And the other day I asked him to give me his top 3 of something, and he made his number 1 2 different things. Christian cheats a lot. I don't think I've ever cheated.
In the same game.
I don't think I've ever cheated the rating system before. So for 0 to 10, I'm giving this one a 12. Yeah. That's where I'm going. It's beyond good. It's one of those, like, it is so good it made me watch Star Trek. Like, I was not interested in this entire franchise, really. And then all of a sudden, this created a love that made me, that expanded to all these other shows and really opened up my fandoms to a lot of stuff I just would have never experienced without it. So, yeah, it's more than a 10 because not only do I think the show deserves a 10, but without it, there are all these other things I wouldn't have enjoyed. So I feel like that justifies me giving it higher than 10 because it's the reason I have Deep Space Nine, which I probably also would give close to a 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it expanded further than the rating system for me. That's my cheat. Oh, man.
You know what? Fair enough.
All right. So for the series as a whole, I need to know, do you have a favorite joke? Do you have a favorite crossover, episode, and character? So we're going to do 4 things: joke, crossover, episode, character. What are your favorites from the series?
Yeah, I had a hard time just getting like one joke down. So I'm a cheat. And I'm going to mention one per season. It may not be the funniest joke, but it's the one that I immediately thought of. Is I went one per season. And just in general, it's the running gag of how AI continues to go evil, no matter how much, how advanced they continue to go on in robotics. Like, it's Star Trek, the original series has like, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 rogue AI gone wrong episodes. And like, they just continue the series in that way of like, it still happens. People still don't put fail safes in there. AI still think themselves of gods as time goes on. And I love what they do there. As well, kind of a season 1 and season 2 together, but the pack lad's idiocy. They just, because if you watch that original Next Generation episode, it's just like, how in the hell did these idiots ever achieve space flight? That there's no way reasonable, even if they got pilfered something from something else. So they build on that and like they create something that can actually attack the Federation and almost kill a bunch of people because they're a bunch of idiots cobbling things together. And yet they even blow up their own home planet by accident. Season 3, I'm choosing a little smaller joke from, I think it's the second holodeck episode that they do, where in the movie, the whole thing is to find Kitty Ha. And in a huge callback to V'ger being Voyager, the probe we spent in space, Kitty Ha is Kitty Hawk. Otherwise, the airplane that was flown in North Carolina to achieve flight for the first time. And I love Boimler's expression, that doesn't even make sense because it was never sent into space.
Oh, man.
I get 2 more and I'll be done, I swear. Then I've got when they're on Ferengi and they're having a job of like writing recommendations for future Federation citizens who go and experience Ferengi and all this stuff. Mariner describes Ferengi as if it's what heaven would look like if God was stupid. It kills me every time I hear that line. And I'll say from the last episode, they got me really good with this one. It's when the Cerritos is turning into alternate versions of itself, and it turns into a Terran Empire version of itself. And Shax gets so excited to see the weapons that are on the ship, and immediately weapons go down, and the dejected look on his face. It's like, oh.
Gosh. Oh, man. I also have to cheat for favorite joke.
Yeah, that's fair.
I couldn't settle for one. So I have 3, and 2 of them are ongoing things. One, the dolphins on the ship are just straight up a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I love that.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I saw the dolphins, I was like, I love this. Like, it not only warmed my heart, but like, it was like an internal laughter. And then there's T'Lyn. When I said 4.5, she's like becomes one of the main characters in some of the later seasons. She's a Vulcan who joins them because reasons. And Vulcans are always kind of funny because they just don't get emotions. I can't think of many who attempt humor as often as she does. She attempts to make jokes so frequently, but she does it with that straight Vulcan face. And every time she makes one of these things and she follows up with, that was a joke, or that was sarcasm. I lose it, man. Like, I think it's so funny.
She was a great addition to the cast.
God, yeah, it was just so funny. The other one was also from this season, but I lost what I was going to say.
I will say the image I put on screen reminded me. One of my favorite season 1 jokes, I'm pretty sure, is it's when in the future, in like the 29th century, whatever, they talk about Boimler being like the most laziest member of Starfleet. But comparatively, the most important person in Starfleet is Chief O'Brien. And I cackled when I saw that because they have a statue of him like behind the transporter, what you call it, on the Enterprise D, but it's not about his achievements in the Dominion War or anything like that. It's just for being like the best person on the Enterprise. Because like that's been a running joke. Like he's the most important person in the galaxy as much as he solves things, also as he suffers the most out of anyone else. I love O'Brien. That got me good.
Man, I think, I remember it was from the episode when they go to Station 80 or 89 or whatever it is.
80.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun jokes in that one. But I think one of the funniest ones, though, is like they kept meeting this character who seemingly was just like teleporting somehow. And it's just like, they either give you no explanation or it's basically like they make it seem like he's the bad guy. And I think that joke where he's actually just not anything basically kept me from seeing what was actually happening for the whole episode, that where they made actually kind of a really big point of like, actually, no, you guys brought the virus. You just assumed it was us. But it was one of those things where it was like, I missed it because of the joke. Like it was a good like smoke screen for what was really going on, I feel like.
Yes, that is a good one.
Also, what's the Star Trek symbol that's the AI that becomes like...
Oh, Badgie.
Badgie, yeah. Everything about Badgie's funny too. Literally everything. All of it.
It took me forever to realize that why it's so funny that his alternate counterpart is called Good G is because bad is part of Bad G. Like, man, I'm so stupid.
God, it's great. Such a fun series. Okay, favorite character. No cheating.
Favorite character. Okay, yes. No cheating. Okay. No cheating. My boy Shax. I love him so much.
That was the other joke. Okay, sorry.
Okay, yeah, okay. I want Tim to call me Baby Bear so bad. I want to be part of his group so bad. Just like this Bajoran who has been through the resistance, who suffered so much and just wants to eject the workforce so bad. And he finally gets it in, is it season 3? And like the look on his face, like yes, I'm getting everything I've wanted in life is happening right now. And yet he still's looking after his bear cubs. And calls both Rutherford and Boimler his little baby bears. It's like, this man,
so funny.
I would go straight into the wormhole to fight the paw race off with this man with a phaser that wasn't working just because he said to.
Yeah, for sure. No, the thing that was funny, it also was his character. So this was also the last season, but there was something they were talking about our main group, right? And they were like, "Yeah, we went through Blanket and we're all fine." And it panned over to him having a psychotic break where he's fighting his ghost self. It's so funny.
And him meditating, and his meditation revolves him murdering a bunch of Cardassians.
Didn't he come back to life as a joke at one point?
Yes.
Like, they always come back to life.
Happen? Don't ask him. He just breaks down in tears.
They always come back to life. It's so funny. Okay. All right. My favorite character. See, the problem is we could do this forever. It's such a good show. Man. This is hard for me. Favorite character is really difficult. I'm going to say Tendi.
Okay.
Which is interesting because I started the series with her being my absolute least favorite. She was so annoying. Her little, hey guys, she was like so preppy. And I was like, you're awful. Why are you so happy? And then like you learn her backstory and you see her like go through all of her war stuff and you see how like whatever. And I think weirdly enough, part of what also redeemed her for me isn't just like, she went from this like war-torn world and she's like, I just kind of want to be a scientist, and finds a way to be joyful anyway, even though she has a terrible past. But it's also like, she's just oblivious, which kind of justifies her like happiness. Like literally in the last episode which was one of the more frustrating things about the last episode, the whole time we all knew that her and Rutherford belonged together. Like we all shipped it, right? We all did. Yeah. And like, it seemed like neither of them got it. the end, Rutherford definitely is openly just has a crush on her, and she's like, "No, we're friends." Just completely oblivious, and you're like, "Yeah, that's on brand," and I love it. She's a great character.
More seasons.
I need
It's
more
not
of
fair.
all of them. All of them. That's the biggest gripe. That the season should have been longer, and there should be more seasons. It's low budget. There was no reason not to. Well, there is, and we'll get to that later. All right, favorite character, favorite crossover.
Ooh, favorite crossover. Okay, it's the DS9 episode. I mean, yeah,
correct.
Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek series of all time. I love how it deconstructs and yet also reconstructs the ideals of the Federation. And then to see them go in and Quark still being Quark, however many years after the Dominion War, he hasn't stopped being himself. Kira also has not stopped being herself. And to see her and Shax just as old war buddies, just reminisce about how many Cardassians they killed together and how they brought out of it and have become better for themselves. It was really fun. It's just nice callbacks to other stuff in DS9. It's just my favorite. I love that episode so much.
Yeah, I agree, and I second everything Christian said. There were a lot of good crossovers. We had a different version of Data at one point. We had they literally become live action and jump into Strange New Worlds, but that was a different show. But that was good too. Yeah,
that's why I didn't put it there, but it's still well done.
Yeah, it was fantastic. There were so many where you're just like, oh, but yeah, the Deep Space Nine one definitely stood out for me too, and causing me to watch Deep Space Nine. So there's that. If you had to pick an all-time favorite episode, just one, no ties, no cheating, Christian, favorite episode.
I'm choosing Caves, and I know that's probably not going to be on people's lists, and I don't know if that's actually
it's a great
this
episode.
question was sent to me not too long ago, so I didn't have too much to prep. What is actually my favorite episode? But it's making fun of bottle episodes and flashbacks and stuff like that of all the different, and the Star Trek in general, the idea of how many caves do you encounter in Star Trek over the different series. And of course, your comm badges don't work because they can't penetrate rot for it, whatever arbitrary reason that helps the story go. You can't transport out of them. And of course, there's also some being that's more than it appears to be. It's just Star Trek encapsulated in one episode. I really enjoy what they do with it.
Yeah. My favorite episode, it's annoying because I talked about this before and I feel like it's an easy answer, and I like to be a little bit more than a hipster that give the easy answer. But man, there's an episode where they're interviewing all the crew. Someone said a lot of terrible things, made the whole ship look bad, and everyone assumes it's Mariner. Because, that's what Mariner does. She talks crap and rebels and all that stuff. So they all assume it's her. Turns out not to be her, but she's already been shipped to the station whose name I always forget.
Starbase 80.
Thank you. And they're like, oh, crap, I messed up. The episode after that, my all-time favorite episode, where the captain, the rule-following captain goes, yeah, you know what? We're going to go get her. We're going to make this right. We're going to fix it. And things come up where they should have done other things. And she said, nah, when it comes to my crew and my daughter, I'm making this right. I'm going to forget the rules for a moment. And watching her learn to rebel for her daughter, who was punished for not rebelling this one time. There's a little bit of irony in it, but also just so much growth in one episode of TV, 30 minutes. And there's so much growth for everyone. And you're like, that was just some good TV,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. All this said, the show is now over, sadly. My heart dropped a little bit when I opened Paramount Plus on my phone earlier, and it said, Lower Decks, the whole series available now. I was like, oh, I guess that's true. Yeah. But series finale, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think it handled itself, wrapping itself up fairly well. We also get, speaking of secondary characters, also be one of my favorites, Ma or Ma'ak, however the heck you pronounce it, the Klingon way.
You still found a way
and
to
his
cheat.
journey yeah, I know. It's me. And his journey to become a captain again, of actually having honor when all these other dishonorable Klingons are around. That's really good. The whole multiverse thing, I loved how they played with that. And the episode before, the William Boyler, not liking the multiverse, but also like Lily Sloan, who is an alternate Lily Sloan, saying, hey, the whole purpose of the multiverse is to see what else we could have been. And then all that wrapping up the way, there's now a way for them to explore that in a safe way that they couldn't before. And Starbase 80 is redeemed at the end of being like the place that can handle the responsibility of doing that. And Captain Freeman giving up her job on the Cerritos to become the leader of Starbase 80. I think they wrap things up as well as possible, given that we know there could still be more stories.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a few things I would like to have seen done. I would have liked to see Rutherford and Tendi get together, but for the most part, yeah, I thought it was done really well. That was great. I don't want to do too many spoilers. I will say, I like that Mariner and Boimler are no longer lower deckers. They're being brought to the bridge, which is like, so it makes sense for the show to end in that way. I like that they opened up where they're going to start doing more multi-dimensional travel stuff, and that could open up for new series. They opened it up and still wrapped things up at the same time. So it gave me hope that there could be more, but also I don't feel like it was unfinished. So it was nice. I don't want to stay too much. The penultimate episode I liked better, the one before the last, because of what you mentioned, where the, Will Boimler is complaining about the multiverse stuff. This is so overdone. And it's so funny because it's how we're all feeling now because of Marvel, where we're like, oh, this is so overdone. It's so cheap. It's like just another whatever. And you're too cheap to come up with new ideas. You're just going to do it a different version of the same thing. And we're like, yeah, that is kind of what's been happening. And then you hear this whole spill on how no, actually, this shows us the immense, endless possibilities of who we can be. And it made me realize maybe we're not sick of multi-dimensional stories. Maybe we're sick of stories that are using it as a cop-out. But if it's done well, I think I'm on board.
Crutch.
Yeah. If there's a reason to it, it's not just a crutch. It's not just like a shortcut. But if it's actually being used for good storytelling, let's do it. Yeah. Speaking of which, we have a multi-dimensional Jesus episode coming out on Christmas Eve. If you're on the main feed, it's already happened, so go check it out. If you're watching live, be ready for that. But it also gets at what is the point of exploring? Are we trying to just see new things to say we saw new things, or are we trying to see what can be, what is possible? And I think a lot of what the purpose of the show is, Star Trek, was to see what is possible in a utopia. I think that was part of the original idea. But what would you say? What is the point of exploring, and should we explore? I got keeping.
It's intrinsically human to want to explore. We ask questions from a young age. Why is this the way it is? What is that person's name? Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to do these things? And then we learn along the way what those things are, and it helps broaden our horizons to see, okay, that's how people in the past had to deal with it. I don't have to deal with the fact that indoor plumbing wasn't a thing. I do because someone else at bed asked the question, what if we didn't have to worry about that? And then, or diseases or what have you that no longer exist in the world because we had someone daring enough to ask the question, let me explore the boundaries of where we're at, or the world that we live in. What else is in the ocean? What else is in the heavens above us? Those questions draw us to find answers because that's part of the human spirit, is wondering what these things are and then finding an answer for it. And if we don't know the answer yet, finding our best equivalent until we can then pass on that knowledge to the next generation so that they're capable of potentially finding that answer. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Star Trek, is that it does the same thing. Why would we want to seek out other races and stuff like that? Why would we want to explore the stars? Well, we're discovering ourselves at the same time while we're finding answers to the questions that we have.
Yeah. And we are about to wrap this one up, but the other thing with exploring, it's not just literally out in space or the ocean, or we hope someone else goes exploring. One of my favorite things of Beauty and the Beast is a subtle point that everyone misses, where they're like, wait a minute, it starts and Belle's like, I want to see the world, I want to do all this traveling, and then it ends and she doesn't do that. If you pay attention, she is shown the world through books. There's a whole library scene. It's kind of a brief mention thing, but that's part of the point of the story. We all can do that. We can do this exploration. As people who care about theology, I can pick up theology books from people that I would never agree with and explore these other ideas. I can pick up a book about how people used to eat or some part of history I don't know. We have the ability to endlessly explore today. And that's why we do part of our All Reading Counts series on the show as well. I think reading is how I explore. But I think we all need to find ways that we are able to do that, because I think it is, like you said, part of what it means to be human. Yeah, good stuff.
I agree.
All right, let's get to the end of this. All right, Christian, if you had to pick one of the things mentioned today as your recommendation, why is it Star Trek Lower Decks?
Because it's amazing, because it's a lot of good fun. It is what you want from a Star Trek production that is going to be comedy, but also call back to what happened before. Like, you can't go wrong with it. There are certain parts of it that are wrong, but at the end of the day, for the most part, the majority is for everyone.
There's nothing bad in this series. It's all wonderful. Please watch it. That's my recommendation. There you go. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, watching, however you're consuming this particular part of media. Remember, again, all the rating reviews, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podchaser, trick those algorithms for us. Shout out again, Daniel Sigmund, you rock. If you guys want to be like Daniel, remember you can support the show, Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcasts for as little as $3 a month. We need all the support we can because we're poor. And remember, we are all, even the poor of us, the poorest of us, the host, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom, a priest. Till next time.
Hi, my name is TJ. I'm here to tell you about the Systematic Geekology shop. That's where we post all of our merch. It is hosted on Creator Spring, and we have a ton of really cool merch, mostly clothing. We have hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, and more. Our hosts wear them all the time. It's actually super comfy. We have glassware, mugs, which everybody loves a good mug. Fill out your cupboard. Get rid of some old ones, which is the part that I never do. That's why I have too many cups. We have cloth bags, posters, and it's really stuff. We like to put our icons on there. We like to put quotes, things we've come up with, and it's cool. It's a cool way, and a lot of it is pretty subtle too, to show support for one of your favorite shows. And my personal favorite is actually our SG Dad Cap, which I haven't been reluctant to buy it because now I have to wear hats at work, and then I get tired of wearing hats. But it's really cool. It's really understated. It is our logo right here, and then it says Systematic Ecology on the back. It's great. It's a really good hat. We have a few of them floating around. Check it out. And if we could all just rock the SG Dad Cap in public, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
If you love our show, you can follow the whole network in a single feed on Spotify at Anna's Our Ministry Podcast or the network page on Apple Podcasts. There you'll find shows like The Homely, The Whole Church Podcast, My Seminary Life, Let Nothing Move You, Dummy for Theology, The Bible After Hours, as well as mine and my husband's show, The Clydes, where my husband Taylor and I go through weekly discussions in a devotional conversational method to help us all get closer to one another and God.